Hopefully there's people. I know there's people here, but
yeah.
Hi everyone. I gotta wait till I see if we got a few people that have come in yet. I'm here.
We got anybody, or they all leave?
No, they're here. They're here in the chat. Some of them are. They said I just posted the links again, so people were probably going to be showing up late anyway, so it's fine. But come on. I mean, sometimes the counter just doesn't show either, so.
That's all right.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to start because hopefully people are here and they will see it. Oh, there we go. We actually do have more people. We have like 8 people right now. So sorry, I posted the links again so late. Hi, Travis. Jason, I'm already warning you. Travis has like 30 questions for you. he already told me.
Yeah.
Okay. So
well, I'm not a lawyer, so be gentle.
No, Travis is the lawyer. He's the one that's going to ask you questions about. He was the one that was reading all this stuff that he sent to me that I was trying to get through. So he was reading it as, as I was reading it. So now he has a bunch of questions. But first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. This interview was supposed to be an interview with Jason that Erekose did. Now, unfortunately, due to his very untimely passing, Jason still wanted to do this interview, and I know that Richard was really excited about this interview. So that's why I decided that I would just help him out with it and get it out there. But I want people to still think this is Richard's interview. This is still him. I'm just subbing in. Jason and I are pretty good friends, but still, this was very much Erekose's and what he wanted to talk about. Jason told me that they had wanted to talk about the legal stuff involving his case, which turns out, well, that's all me. So I can handle that. I didn't need to do too much, but I did want to research some on Jason's the procedural history of his case, which it turns out there was a lot of it. It gets very complicated. So we're going to try to best make you help you understand it and make some sense out of it. But as usual, I'm sure you're going to be sitting there like shaking your head, wanting to scream at the monitor, or wanting to go break shit because yeah, it is incredibly frustrating. And so I'm gonna let Jason say some things too, and then we'll get started.
I'm just ready to get going. But before we do, I just want to kind of give a nod to Richard and say, my heart goes out to his family. I pray he rests in peace. And I was looking forward to doing this with him. And I think this is a good way to honor him and that interview that people were looking forward to. So glad to do it.
Yes, thank you. And if there was any way possible that I could have done it from his own channel, I would have done it, because I don't want this to be about me. I just want it to be about him and finishing what he started. That's what I think I put in my original post. It's like, I just want to finish what he started, because I know that his interviews meant a lot to him, and he obviously cared very much about wrongful convictions. So where we're going to start is, now, do you want to just give a quick recap of pretty much what you guys went through the first time, just who you are, why you went to prison, just a 5-minute recap of everything?
I mean, I think most people pretty much know me by now, but, I was wrongfully convicted in Illinois for 2 counts of first-degree murder. Spent 15 and a half years there before I was able to prove my innocence and go home. Illinois is no stranger to wrongful convictions. They have a very, very, very bad and long history with it. In fact, every year when we go to the innocence conferences, there's more people from Illinois than anywhere. I mean, that's like the hotbed of wrongful convictions. But I mean, I don't know how much of the story you want me to get into, since we're talking about all the legal stuff today. But
well, just so for people that might have, I'd say just for people that might have missed the first interview, or for some reason missed you during marathon, just say that, like, basically what you said, that you're wrongfully convicted. How long were you in prison?
Yeah, and so I was wrongfully convicted for the murder of a woman that was an unidentified victim, and she went unidentified for about 7 years. I'd been locked up almost 7 years when they finally came out with the identity of her, which helped obviously answer a lot of questions for us, like who was she, where was she from, who does she associate with. Helped us track down a lot of new information. Eventually led to me getting more help and fighting my case. And it's unfortunate, though, that her and her family will never have true justice. The people that we suspect that actually committed the crime will never be pursued. Nothing is ever going to come of that. The police aren't going to investigate it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way that goes sometimes.
Can you please
They
just
don't
tell
want to
the
admit they
train
were wrong.
story? Because that's insane.
The what story?
The train story, because that's insane. I just found out about it, so I want to hear about it. Or I think everyone else would be like, that's insane. That's crazy. These people.
Yeah, so I talk about that in the podcast I did with Jason Flom, Wrongful Conviction podcast. Basically, when we learned who the victim was, we found out that she had come under the influence of a mother and daughter grifter team that had a long history of taking advantage of handicapped people and elderly people and, things like that. And one of the other people that they had done this to was this man, Gonzalo Chamizo, who he's got a lot of psychiatric problems. He's in a mental hospital today. But they had somehow convinced him to lay down on some railroad tracks and have his arm chopped off by the train, and then get money from the state for that. And then they sold the victim to him for that money. And then they continued to extort the victim to get money out of her. At least that's our understanding of things. I mean,
Right.
like I said, we don't have all the answers because nobody's going to pursue this case any further. You're not going to get the state to go along with that. So it's unfortunate. I mean, the only thing we can say is thankfully I was able to prove my innocence and not be in prison anymore.
Right.
But sadly, her and her family will never have true justice.
Right. And now the mother of the grifter team is already dead, and then the daughter, they're not going to find, basically.
No, she's a career criminal. She's very well aware of what to do and how to do it. When we deposed her in my case, she basically played dumb the whole time. She's just, I don't know, to everything. What's your name? How old are you? When were you born? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know. She gets up, go to the bathroom. She takes everything with her drink, everything, so nobody can get DNA or fingerprints from her. She knows the game. And so she wasn't very cooperative then. And if she's the only person that they could go after today, because the husband is in prison. I mean, not prison, a mental institution. He's like completely gone. When they came and investigated the missing person, because I was locked up for the murder, but the county she was actually from was looking for her. It was a missing person investigation,
Right.
And they went and investigated him, and he's so far gone. When they found him in an institution, he was literally masturbating and playing with his feces as they interviewed him. That's how gone this guy is. So they'll never come after him. He'd never be competent enough to stand trial. The mother of the team is dead, and the daughter's a career criminal. So all she would have to even do is say, hey, it wasn't me, it was these other two. And, what are they going to do? How are they going to prove anything otherwise, especially 20 years later where are they going to find evidence against her? I'm sure if there was anything, it's gone, destroyed, or, never be found again. So it's sad, but that's an unfortunate occurrence in a lot of cases.
And that's what always happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So many victims' families never get true justice. In fact, they have their wounds ripped open a second time because they find out the wrong person was locked up. And that's if they even accept that. Sometimes they don't. But the wrong person's locked up. So their whole nightmare is ripped open again. And if there's no pursuit for the real perpetrator, they never get that justice. And the farther out you go, the harder it is to solve those crimes. People die, evidence disappears, and, it's unfortunate, but it becomes another cold case, which a lot of cases are cold cases.
Yeah. Now, I just want to go back to what you just said a little while ago, though, that when you were arrested, they did not know who the victim was. You had no idea who this person was. You had no contact with her, nothing. And you said that the county she was from, which was it the next county over?
No, it wasn't that close, but it wasn't far. You could probably drive there, I don't know, an hour, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't far.
But she
but
was
it's just
reported as a missing person.
absolutely. Before I went to trial, a missing person report was filed. There were dental records out there for them to figure out who she was. But for some reason, these two counties never made that connection. In fact, they never made the connection. It was people in Racine, Wisconsin, that actually put the pieces together. And it wasn't for a lack of caring on Carpentersville. It was, I think, in my opinion, more Lake County didn't want the answers. They had who they wanted. That's all they cared about.
Right. And you believe that you were targeted too. You believe you were targeted. I know you can't prove it, but you believe that you were targeted.
Yeah, I know there was a particular officer that had it in for me, and he basically let me know if I didn't be his snitch, that he was gonna make my life a living hell. And I'm not a snitch, so my life became a living hell. But yeah, the people in Carpentersville, the sergeant down there was actually very helpful. He was willing to talk to me and my family. He wanted answers. He didn't believe it was us, that had anything to do with this. And when he went to Lake County to talk to them, they didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't know none of that. Hey, you're another cop. We want to work together. It was, get out of here. We don't want nothing to do with this. So they didn't want the answers.
Kathy, that's where Jason is too now. So she just said, I grew up outside Chicago. So glad I'm in Tennessee now. And I said, yeah, that's where Jason is now too. So, yeah. Okay, so let's start on this. Then we're going to talk about the procedural history. And it's really good to talk about this because, first of all, it's very convoluted. It really is. And the fact that, I always want people to understand how long this process can be, that it's not like what you see on TV and it's not just wrapped up in an hour, and that, it doesn't take a month to convict somebody and it doesn't take a month to release somebody. So,
well, not only that, but a lot of the stuff that you see on TV, like CSI and Bones, are probably the worst about this, but they put stuff out there that's not even realistic. Like there's so many scientific things they show on those shows that we don't do yet. We don't have the capability to do yet. Some of it we can, but not all of that stuff. A lot of it's just fictionalized TV. It's entertaining. People like it, but it gives people a misunderstanding of how things really happen and how things really unravel. Fighting a case obviously takes many years. Yeah. A lot of losses. They also cost a lot of money to do that. To get testing, DNA testing, to track down information, to hire investigators, to be in court. All that shit costs money. To get documents, everything costs money. So it's not easy fighting these cases, but TV would make you think it is.
Right. I totally lost my train of thought. I was going to say there, but that's fine. No, it's not your bad. You're the guest. You should be talking. I just wanted to say something before I forgot, and then I forgot it. But that's why. It'll come to me eventually. That's fine. I know what I was going to say. I said that I also like to make sure that people understand how realistic court proceedings are, not just because I want them to be aware that it can take a while, but so that they don't give up hope. Because just because it's taking a while doesn't mean that there isn't still hope and that things can't still turn out great. Do I actually have my YouTube on? No, I don't. Okay. I was getting feedback from something. I didn't know what that was. So I just always want people to be aware, because I know it's really easy to lose heart, a little bit and get defeated. But that, just as you guys had to wait it out, like when you and Steve and Brendan, you have to wait it out. We need to wait it out too. And that there's always hope, because we've heard of people being wrongfully convicted for longer than 15 years, that have gotten out. Steve was in 18 years the first time. So just because things are slow doesn't mean they've stopped.
No, that's very true. You basically, you got to set yourself into a certain mindset at a time, and not everybody can do it, but it needs to be done. And you're always hoping for the best, but expecting the worst, because you're going to get knocked down. You're going to lose a lot of battles, but it's being able to pick yourself back up and keep fighting. That is the key. And you're right. It takes a long time. It took 15 years for me. My buddy, Jimmy Soto, he's been locked up over 30 years for something he didn't do. And he's still fighting. I mean, it's unbelievable how long some of these things can take. One appeal can take many years. And if you lose that, then you got to go on to the next appeal, and that could take many years. It's a long process. So yeah, you got to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what your personal philosophy was that helped you pick yourself up after a defeat? I know we talked about it before. I didn't know if you want to talk about that at all, or what basically the way you looked at it and how you kept going.
Yeah. So early on, I kind of adopted. Well, first of all, when I first got locked up, it was mostly anger. It was mostly like, "Fuck you! You know, who the hell are you to do this to me? I'm not going down without a fight." But I eventually adopted a very militaristic mindset. I took the words of Patrick Henry's "Give me liberty or give me death." I read a lot of militaristic books, Julius Caesar, Winston Churchill, people like that, Sun Tzu's Art of War. I took things that I learned from my grandfather and others that had done military service, and I looked at everything in that fashion, that I was fighting a war. And that kept me going. My family was my special forces. I was looking to build an army. I was taking strategies from the art of war to utilize in my court battles. I looked at the courtrooms as battlefields. Everything was about war. But eventually, I did have to have like hope to go along with it. You can't just fight for the fucking sake of fighting. You have to have more to it. But I knew I was not going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I was either going to get out through legal means, or I was going to get out another way. The only way they was going to keep me there is they would have to kill me, and that was the end of it.
And I'm sure many people feel the same way as you. Okay, so now we'll get to the legal stuff. Now, you were convicted in October of 2000, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just talked about this, so I hope that's right. But you weren't released until May of 2015. So again, 15 years, over 15 years, 15 and a half about. So
Right.
Once you were sentenced, now this will be interesting because people usually are so used to Wisconsin law that I found out something today. In Wisconsin, you would file a petition for post-conviction relief like right after sentencing. You would file that to address any issues that happened during the trial, some immediate issues that happened during the trial.
Right.
In Illinois, it's called you said post-trial motions. That's what they refer to it as, is filing post-trial motions. Okay, so that was the first step. Now, you had a public defender for the trial.
Right.
And I know that you've said before that the public defender essentially sets you up for failure.
Pretty much. Well, I don't like to use the word they set me up for it, but they basically did the state's job for them.
Okay.
They didn't provide me any defense. I've been heard saying before, and I'll say it again. Had I been on my jury, I would have convicted me. They didn't provide any defense whatsoever. They didn't believe in me, and they didn't think that was important, but I did. But unfortunately, I didn't know what else I could do. I didn't have money. I had to depend on my family. And, I told them over and over I needed a real lawyer, but, my family's not rich. So, we didn't have like the opportunity to just say, hey, let's go and find this great lawyer to do this. So I was stuck with them, and I didn't know if I could do anything different. And, they basically screwed me. Ineffective assistance of counsel. That was one of my biggest arguments for a long time. Actually, for the whole thing. But go ahead.
Okay, so then you were able to hire an attorney.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, so what issues did you raise on those initial post-trial motions? What were you trying to fight at that point? Do you remember?
Ineffective assistance to counsel was the biggest one. So when I lost my trial, my family was like, holy shit, we got to get him a lawyer. And I'm like, I've been saying this all along, right? But I get it. It's expensive, And so my mom had to get rid of all her 401k. My grandmother had to scrape together whatever she could. My other grandparents did whatever they could, and basically created a lot of debt for everybody to hire me a lawyer, which I had for the post-trial motions, my first direct appeal and my PLA, and then the money ran out, and then we lost that lawyer, and I had to become my own lawyer. But initially, I think our first arguments were mostly about ineffective assistance of counsel. In fact, we had the public defenders take the stand to discuss what they did to me in my trial. That's probably in the brief. I don't know if you've read the briefs or not, but it's, yeah.
I was trying to, and I ran out of time. So I just kind of like breezed through them a little bit. I know that I have more information, I think, on the collateral proceeding. I'm trying to think, or on your direct appeal even, because there's not much on that on those trials, those post-trial motions.
No, it was a very short, quick thing. I think it was mostly, we pretty much expected that wasn't going to go anywhere. Right. I mean, you're basically asking the court that convicted you to admit that they fucked up in that courtroom, and they're not going to do that. Same reason why years later when I did my post-conviction, I threw everything out there that I could think of, but I didn't expect that I would win, because I'm basically asking the trial court to overturn itself. You know, I'd never really expected that to happen, but I knew I had to file all that stuff.
So okay, so you had that attorney for that, and then you had him for your direct appeal.
Right.
Now, let's see. So here's some of the things that I believe were in the direct appeal, if I'm looking at the right part. It said whether the state knowingly used false testimony to deprive you of a fair trial.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to add anything to any of these, just go ahead. Otherwise, I'm just going to list them off. Whether the police had probable cause to arrest you without obtaining an arrest warrant. Whether you were deprived of your right to an impartial jury, where the state asked inflammatory questions of prospective jurors. That seems kind of odd. What do you have any idea what you meant by the inflammatory questions that the jury was asked? Sorry about Justice. She does this every time. Justice.
Yeah, it was. So it was basically, we were arguing about the way that they described certain things that they showed the jury, like autopsy photos and things like that. That once you see those, you're so like emotionally moved, like, oh my God, that's so horrible. How could you not be moved emotionally? And a jury verdict should not be driven by emotion. It should be driven by facts. And unfortunately, prosecutors have a very bad habit of putting out emotional stuff as opposed to facts, because they know that will sway jurors in their direction. But there was a lot of different things. I'm trying to think of some of the key ones, but I know most of it was photographs and things like that.
Yeah.
And then as far as all the other I'm sorry.
I just can't believe they can even do that for that reason. It's like automatically kind of putting a strike against you that people are assuming, oh, you did this because they're seeing these.
Look, the assumption is against you anyway. All that garbage about you're innocent until proven guilty, that's a bunch of shit. Honest to God,
unfortunately,
that shit that's not real. Look, the moment you're in that fucking defendant's seat, you're assumed that you did something wrong to be there. That's what people think. It's all on you to prove you didn't do something wrong. That's not what they say it is, but that's the reality of it. And then once you're actually convicted, that is actually the law. In Illinois, it says that everything, once you've been convicted and you're filing all these other appeals, everything is weighed in a light most favorable to the prosecution, because you've already been judged by a so-called jury of your peers that you're guilty. So now your bar is even higher. But yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that to sway emotions. I personally, I don't even like the way they argue things. For example, like this, you'll have a prosecutor that will go in and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this man did this, he did this, he's guilty, you need to convict him. They should never be allowed, in my opinion, to say that as if they know it with certainty. They should say it as if they're putting forth an idea that they have, and it's up to you to decide. In other words, instead of saying it the way I just did, they should go in and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we believe that this is the guy that did this crime, and we believe that the evidence will support that, and we believe that you will find this to be true. But don't demand it as if it's a certainty, because that misleads people.
Now, Travis added, I don't know if you can read it there, but Travis said they use the word torture in jury selection. Do you remember that?
They did that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he said. Like I said, he's going to fill me in on the blanks because he read it more carefully than I did, probably.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because that was the other thing. You know, they were trying to make it look like, you know, me and my buddies like picked this. They basically, the state's theory was me and my buddies picked this woman up and tortured her and had this weird, like, I don't know, cult type fucking odd sexual fucking unusual night throughout the night, killing her. I don't know where they got all these ideas, but you know, that was their theory. And they, you know, they basically used the idea that, you know, hey, this guy works in a porn shop. This guy listens to rock and roll music, heavy metal. He's got tattoos and body piercings and does drugs. Well, he's got to be this bad, terrible, horrible guy. They did the same thing to the West Memphis Three, right?
Yeah.
Damien Eccles, hey, he wears black clothes and he listens to heavy metal music. Right. It's got to be some cult shit, you know, some
satanic ritual that he.
Yeah, it's such ridiculous nonsense, you know. But it's designed to instill emotional sway and fear in jurors. You know, basically it comes down to he's this, and this, so therefore he must be guilty, even if we don't have evidence. You know, how else? I mean, who else would have a lifestyle like that, right?
Right.
So
of course.
It doesn't matter the fact that on a daily basis I could see the same fucking people come into my shop to buy fucking sex fucking toys and fucking porn and everything else. You know, it's like, oh no, only weird low life people live these lifestyles. You know, come on.
Yeah. For those who weren't aware, Jason worked at an adult toy store, or adult bookstore. Can't remember which one it was technically, but both. An adult store when he was arrested. Kathy, you weren't here for the beginning when we mentioned this. We believe, I say we like I was there, but Jason believes that he was originally pinned for this because of a cop having it out for him. And no, he did not know the victim, didn't know anything about her, didn't have any clue who she was, never knew her, never knew anything about her ever. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, okay, that cop, he had been harassing me for a while. I don't know why he ever really started fucking with me, to be honest. I guess it was just because of where I worked and lived. I don't know. But he started coming around and harassing me. He would pull me and my buddy Jay over and fuck with us just to give us a hard time. He came and searched my place without me being home, without a warrant or anything, and then tried to use shit that he found in there against me to fucking pressure me to be a snitch. And I mean, I can't prove any of this, unfortunately, but I mean, this is the reality of what happened. And then when I told him I didn't know anything, you know, I can't tell you anything, I don't know anything. He's like, well, if you don't cooperate with me, I'll make your life a living hell. And I'm like, well, I don't know nothing. Which, you know, I mean, I wasn't being honest, but I'm not a snitch either. So It is what it is. But it doesn't mean that he has the right to fucking railroad my life.
Right.
But
how
I feel
long
like
was it after that?
I'm sorry.
After that, how long was it after he said he was going to make your life a living hell that this happened?
It was like maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks later.
Okay.
I mean, it was like really quick. And he was the guy that arrested Jeremy Tweedy, who was one of my co-defendants, who I did not even know on the night in question. But by the time they were done with him, Jeremy Tweedy and I were best friends that have known each other for years. You know, I mean, his hand was crushed in the car door before he even got to the police station. And years later, I found out when he recanted that all they ever wanted to talk about the moment they had him in the room was me. All they asked him was, tell us about Jason Strong. What did Jason Strong have to do with this? How long have you known Jason Strong? Tell us about his involvement in this crime. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize they wanted me. And he didn't know me. I mean, he only met me like, what, a couple days prior to us being arrested, which was after the night in question of when the crime happened. And so he's like, well, fuck this dude. All right, that's what they want. I'll give them to him. He didn't care. You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's got a record. I mean, he's a career criminal. He's been in and out numerous times. So he didn't give a shit. He didn't lose any sleep over fucking me over. And he only had to do a year. He was never charged with murder.
That's insane.
He had a concealment of a homicide, which was 3 years, but then they reduced it for his testimony to obstruction of justice for 2 years. He did 1 year, gets out. And his story changed so many freaking times. It's like, how the fuck can you believe anything he said? And that was one of our arguments in the appeal when you talk about, you know, the lack of evidence and the lies of witnesses and this and that. The prosecution admitted in my trial, we have no idea what this guy's going to say. He's made numerous different statements. He had like 7 different statements before he even got to trial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so how could you believe that person?
Because
And
they
not
wanted
only
to.
that, if the person was that forthcoming, listen, here's the other thing. You know, so many things didn't make sense in this case, but if you had a witness that was your star witness, was telling you all this stuff, how did you not know who the victim was by that point? Wouldn't he have told you? We didn't know for 7 more fucking years.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, it's like if this was your, you know, if what he was saying was true, you'd think he would have had a lot more information. But he didn't. He just had what they fed him and what the medical examiner, you know, put forth as evidence. That's all they had. As far as what he said, he was going off of their shit.
Now, I don't know. Again, Travis said something. He said that they asked jurors if they saw gruesome photos, would it have impact on ability to fairly judge evidence? Your lawyers left 3 jurors on who said it would be tough.
Like I said, they didn't do much to help me. So here's what my public defenders basically did. So for all those that don't know, I confessed to the crime. I was coerced to confess to the crime. It was a false confession, proved false by scientific evidence many years later. But I mean, it happens. People confess to crimes they didn't commit. Interrogations suck. They're hell, and people break. But rather than put up a defense for me, their idea was, well, it's easier if we do it where we just say that your confession was true, but it wasn't you, it was Jeremy that did it. Well, that's not a fucking defense. That's basically taking the fucking state's case and saying, okay, let's just negotiate an easier way of going about this. I mean, they basically, that's why they didn't care about the jury. That's the same reason why they didn't care when one of the officers lied and I said, hey, this woman is lying about what actually happened. And they said, nobody's going to care about that. No, they will care about that. That's important. And the situation was the woman that lied on the stand was at one point she was posing as an undercover or as a prostitute. She was undercover. And like I said, I worked in porn. And that's how she met me. And I was very nice to her. I was trying to help her not get in trouble. I didn't want to call the cops on her, all those things. And she goes to my trial and makes it seem like I was threatening to her, that I was talking mad shit to her and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's lies. And they're like, nah, nobody cares what you would have said to a prostitute. I'm like, no, they wouldn't care. I'm charged with murdering a woman, for Christ's sake. What the fuck, man? But they didn't care. They were like, we know what we're doing. This is the best route. What could I do? I mean, I couldn't like stand up and say, hey, Your Honor, this is a sham. My lawyers don't represent me right. I mean, I didn't have no options. I didn't know what I could do. So I wrote it out and got screwed, basically. I mean, I couldn't even testify on my own behalf.
Yeah. I just want to go back because I started laughing because I want to be clear. When he said he worked in porn, he did not mean making movies.
No, I mean, no, it's
adult store. I just had to clarify because when you said everybody knows I worked in porn. Yeah. Let me make sure we cleared that up. That one piece up.
My bad.
No, that's
yeah.
When you said it, I kind of started laughing. So I was like, that could be taken in a really bad way. Not bad. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying in your case, that's not what Yeah. So okay, so that appeal was rejected, denied. They affirmed the lower court's opinion, and then you had to file what
a PLA
petition. Yeah, PLA, a petition for leave to appeal.
Right, and that goes to the Illinois State Supreme Court.
Okay, and go ahead.
And they denied it. Yeah, they denied it, which really is not surprising. It seems like a lot of state courts have a tendency to just back each other up. So I wasn't surprised by that, but so after that though is when shit really got tougher. So here's the other thing that happened during all of this is that my understanding of the reality of our justice system started to become clearer and clearer with each defeat, because in the beginning you have this mindset that what you're fed on TV, you don't know. Right? You're thinking, oh, it'll write itself. I didn't do anything wrong. The justice system will correct this. Well, it doesn't work that way. We'd like to think it does, but it doesn't work that way. And after you keep losing, you start to realize, wow, this is not going to happen overnight. You know, at first you're thinking, oh, I'll appeal it and I'll be okay. Nope, not that easy. So I lost the direct appeal. I lost the PLA, and we ran out of money. And so we lost the hired attorney. So now what do? I did the only thing that I had an option to do, and that's become my own attorney. And so I filed a pro se post-conviction petition. Pro se basically is just a fancy way of saying I filed it myself as my own attorney. So I filed a post-conviction petition, which goes back to the state court that convicted me. So, I mean, even though I was throwing every single thing I could think of at them, there was a part of me that was like, they're never going to overturn themselves. So it's kind of just, you know, it's an effort in futility in a way, but at the same time, it was a way to get all these arguments on the record. Because for years, I'd been upset with all of my attorneys, even the paid ones, because they would always tell me to everything I brought up, that's not important. That'll be important if you get a new trial. I'm like, this is what helps me get the new fucking trial. I'm not concerned about procedure. I'm concerned about, I didn't fucking do this. And I want to put forth every piece of fucking evidence I can to show that. And so that's how I filed my post-conviction, is I threw every single argument I could think of at them, and I wrapped it in whatever constitutional issue I could find that supported it. And then I had people go out and find new evidence for me. I had people talk to the public defender, the people that screwed me. One of them actually felt bad about what he did and gave us information I never had before. We tracked down people and got recantations. We got new testimony from people that could have verified lies of other witnesses, but were never called. And I put all this stuff in that petition. But I don't believe the judge ever read it, because he basically boilerplated the whole thing. In a few instances talked about there was no evidence or anything supporting what I was claiming. But yet at the end, I had exactly that. I had evidence and information and documents to support my claims. So it makes me think he never actually read it. Maybe he did, but I find it hard to believe. But he did something very weird after that, and we'll get to that once you're ready. So
I just wanted to first point out to people that this post-conviction petition that he's talking about is the equivalent of the 97406 that Steve had in front of the circuit court. They just call it something different there. I mean, we still call it a petition for post-conviction relief, but it's collateral review, and his was collateral review as well. Now, that was filed in July of 2003. And you, let's see, it was kind of the same things. A lot of it was kind of reiterating a lot of the same things.
Right.
But, you know, they interfered with your right to testify. They failed to investigate and present some of that stuff.
I tried to find every little thing I could think of, even stuff that, like, the stuff that everybody was telling me wasn't important. I tried to bring all that stuff into, because I was under the understanding that was my last chance to present certain things, and I wanted to make sure I got a lot of that stuff in arguments and on record.
Right.
So I was trying to get everything I could, and you know, I wasn't a lawyer. I was learning as I went. You know, I'm looking at old briefs that were filed by other attorneys. I'm looking at stuff that my buddy sent me. Jimmy Soto, a good friend of mine. He taught me a lot of stuff, showed me certain books, how to read case law, find certain things that I need. And I just pieced all this stuff together from every bit of information I could find. I didn't know, I didn't go to school for law. I didn't know all this stuff. I had to learn it on the fly. And you have time frames. It's not like it's like, hey, I got the next 10 years to do this. Not that I would want to take that long, but you realize, even though they take forever to rule on shit, you usually have to file stuff really fast, which is, burdensome. Like, for example, in an appeal, you have 30 days to file that shit. If you don't know what the fuck you're doing, you better learn really fast.
Right.
So there's a lot of things like that really just add on the extra burden for you when you become your own attorney.
Yeah, because you filed the post-conviction motion only 73 days after you were rejected on the direct appeal. So not much time, not even 3 months, like, 2.5 months. That's it until you filed the next one. Now, one thing here,
my grandmother, so she was one of my special forces people, right? She she will tell you, man, she was a rock star. I filed what I filed in a large part because of her as well. Now she'll give me all the credit, but she is the one that typed everything. I didn't have a typewriter. So I wrote my entire post-conviction petition by hand, color-coded it, everything. I put extraordinary details of instructions with it, and then sent it all home to my grandmother to type up. And she typed the whole thing up for me perfectly. And then I, did what was necessary and got everything stamped and filed, and, the rest is history. But my grandmother was very instrumental in making that a reality. Otherwise, I would have had to, turn it all in just handwritten, which I have filed a brief before that was handwritten.
Yeah, I think Steve filed one that was handwritten as well. So we've seen those before. And this one, okay, I'm looking at your actual federal petition right now, because that's what it's actually doing, the procedural history. That's why I'm looking at this one, because it kind of has everything. But it is also, you can tell it's filled out by them asking you questions like, what was the date of this? What was this? What are the claims you filed, whatever. So they're walking through it, but it is typed very nicely. I do have to ask one thing though. It says that you were deprived of a fair trial when the trial court allowed the state to present irrelevant and prejudicial evidence. One of the things listed was testimony on feet. Do you have any? What is that? I could not figure out what that could be.
So so the medical examiner in my case put forth evidence that there was wax on the feet of the victim.
Okay.
And then from that, he also put forth this theory that the victim had been burned massively all over her body by candle wax. Mm-hmm. And they used that to try to tie it towards me because I had candles in my house. And, my girlfriend told him, oh, he would like to touch my feet and do this, all this shit. So they used that to try to say that, oh, because of that, this, right? But what it turned out many years later, actually, in my post-conviction petition, I actually put the document in there that stated what was on their feet was not wax. It was wrong. It wasn't wax. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it wasn't wax. And I'm like, so that flies in the face of the testimony and the reasons they needed for putting all that out there. And so that's why I brought that up. Okay. And in actuality, she was never burned with anything. The medical examiner was wrong about all of that.
We'll get to that.
In fact, what he thought was burn was actually decomposition. But we can get into that later if you want.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, though, is that as weird as it looks to just say testimony on feet, that actually ended up being a very important part of what happened later. Then the medical examiner interpreting things incorrectly.
Right.
Okay, so then let's see. Let's go on for that. Okay, so the rest is kind of like what we talked about before. You had no evidentiary hearing, so you weren't granted a hearing on any of this. And let's see, the date, the court basically denied it, or again, affirmed the lower court decision in October of 2003. Let's see. Then it says, okay, did you appeal for the ruling on your petition? Yes. Date of decision 2005. Are we at 2005 already?
Yeah, so that's our private conversation. I told you about that, so I'll tell it now. So my post-conviction petition was in front of the trial court that convicted me, so I didn't expect to win. But so he denied that and called it patently frivolous and without merit. Frivolous and patently without merit.
Right.
There you go. But anyway, so it was very odd to me what happened next. And what happened next was I filed a notice of appeal as a pro se litigant. I'm like, I'm still going without an attorney. And he threw it away and rewrote it and gave me an attorney when I never asked for one. And I'm like, why the fuck would he do that when he just shot me down and said my whole fucking thing was without merit? Like, why would he even go to that length? But I didn't know what to make of it. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to ignore, don't question a gift horse or look a gift horse in the mouth, whatever the fuck the saying is. I wasn't going to be like, nah, fuck it, I don't want this. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. Unfortunately, the guy took fucking forever to do this brief or this appeal. It took him over 2 years to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the whole time, I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ, I could do this faster and better. And he wasn't listening to me, just like all the other fucking attorneys. He never listened to me. And so basically, fast forward this long duration of fucking time later, I lose. And so that's how we got way further down the line, was this guy. And then when he lost, he dumped me and I'm on my own again. So I was, the whole time, I'm just like, this motherfucker, I could have done all this shit already and been, you know, much further along. But in a way, it was kind of a weird blessing in disguise, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because the next stage was the PLA, and I filed pro se, lost. As soon as I lost, I got ready to start preparing my federal habeas corpus petition. And when that happened, the news came out that they had finally identified the victim. And that brought out a whole bunch of new information for us. We knew who she was, where she was from, who she associated with, her last known, you know, contacts with people, all these things. And that was stuff that we didn't know before. So it was very important. And I thought about it, I was like, fuck, had I not had that dude that drug the fucking shit out for 2 years, I would have already been through with all my remedies before this new evidence came out. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a good thing that it happened the way it happened. Because then I was able to go to federal court and say, hey, I got new shit, you know, and hopefully get a stay, go back, present all this, you know, do all the things you got to do. But basically, we were stoked. We were like, man, we got new information now. And it was around that same time that I started to build a rapport with Jane Raley at Northwestern. And she couldn't help me on the record at the time because they already had so many cases, but she was trying to help me off the record. She was just, you know, behind the, you know, under the table kind of thing. And she put us in touch with a woman, Cynthia Estes, who did some investigation work for us and went down to Carpentersville, where the victim was from, to look into all this information about who she was and where, you know, what was her situation, and talk to the officers. Who Sergeant Bossart of Carpentersville was awesome. You know, hats off to the guy. He was very forthcoming to want to give us information we needed. He talked to my family. He was very helpful. He didn't believe that I was the guy. He believed it was these other people, the mother-daughter grifter team and this Gonzalo Chamizo guy. So all these things kind of came together at the same fucking time. And it was right when I was getting ready to go to federal court. And so federal court, if you'll just, you know, let me go a little bit further with this before we answer questions. In federal court, it became an interesting thing because I ended up filing late. So I had a procedural issue. And the reason for that is, you know, in prison, shit happens. You end up on lockdown a lot. And in the year that all this stuff was happening, we spent almost the entire fucking year on lockdown. I think we came off like 4 months into the year. So it's like it happens all the fucking time.
I get you've gone all like that tinny sound again, where we can't hear you really well. I don't know.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Just leave and come back real quick. Okay, he'll come back. But to answer your question, actually, this is how Jason just is, and Richard understood that, and this is exactly how we talked on Richard's interview in the first part, if you ever want to watch that. So I said, if you've been wrongfully convicted for 15 years, you're entitled.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Is that better?
Yep.
All right.
I just want to stop you before you went too far. I know, because we've talked about that before. After a certain amount of time, that seems to happen for some reason. So, but I knew when it happened with Richard, I know that you left and came back and it was fine. So I figured, let's just stop you right away and come back. Okay.
All right. Well, maybe next time I'll use my iPad, see if that works better. But anyway, so because we were on lockdown for most of that year, I was unable to go to the law library and research the things that I needed to research. And so the prison's way of doing things while you're on lockdown is the lady that runs the law library and people that work with her will walk around the cell houses and see if people need any information or paperwork or copies or whatever. And I told her, I said, look, I got to file a federal habeas. And she said, oh, don't worry, you have a year to file. So I assumed when she told me I had a year to file that I meant I had a whole year to file. What I did not understand, because I couldn't go and actually read the law, was that I had the year to file minus any time I spent filing my post-conviction petition previously.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't realize that. So when I filed, I thought I was timely, but I ended up being like a week late or something like that.
Well,
and so
I said, this is what I looked up to get clear on when after we got off the phone. So what happened, and I'm going to explain this because just because I just read it. But what happened is that, yeah, federal rules state you have a year to file your petition if you're a writ for a petition of habeas corpus.
Mhm.
And you thought you did that because your PLA was denied in January 2006, and you filed the federal petition in January 2007. What the state came back and said was that your case should have been, the year should have started from when your direct appeal was denied. And just because, and so it was 73, this is how I knew how many days it was. It was 73 days in between those two petitions. So they said that that time should have been told so that you didn't have that. So you actually were 52 days late.
Right.
Because if you count those 73 days in between those two things you filed, and that's what the state was saying. And then I don't know if you want to explain it. I can explain what the judge said about that because it's kind of annoying. Even though the judge ruled in your favor, still there's things that just make me like, ugh, scream.
Yeah, well, the judge. So the whole point of what I was trying to get at, it really doesn't matter how late I was, any of that shit. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not important anymore. What's important is that I feel I got the best judge I could ever fucking get for a federal judge. And I'm very thankful for that. Matthew Kennelly is an amazing judge. He's fair, he's honest, he cares about the truth. And I feel like before I even had the procedural hearing, he must have read my case and felt something strongly about it, because he could have gave me any fucking run-of-the-mill attorney he wanted to, just like the previous trial court did, you know. They gave me that appellate counsel that drug it on for 2 years and didn't do shit for me. He could have done the same thing. But instead, he called Tom Garrity, who was the director of Northwestern's Bloom Legal Clinic at the time. He called him personally and asked him to look at my case. And Tom took the case on as a procedural issue and came and talked to me. And after talking to me, he went back and talked to Jane Raley, Cynthia, looked at all the different stuff about my case and decided, we're going to take you all the way. And that's when Northwestern became my attorneys. Not just for the procedural, but for the whole enchilada, you know?
Right.
And, but during that hearing, I just want to point out the fairness of the judge. He was one of those guys that he didn't let the prosecution beat up on you. You know, you know how the prosecutors, they love to say, oh, nope, just answer this, yes or no. We don't want to hear all the other stuff. And he would stop them every time, be like, no, hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Strong. Whatever you want to add, you say what you want to say. And I admired that about him. He always wanted to give me the chance to speak and say what I needed to say. He wouldn't let them bully me around and not get a chance to speak. And so that was very cool of him. And he wouldn't take any nonsense from people either. The law library lady, he ended up crying on the stand because he had to give her, you know, a lesson. Basically, he was like, look, I don't know who the hell you think you are, but in my court, you're going to play by the rules and answer the questions. Right. You know, because she was playing this little game where she didn't think she had to answer questions. But anyway, at the end of the day, he believed me, but there wasn't ample evidence to prove that I was untimely because of her. So it led to other reasons to put things on hold and do different shit. But he did
though. I just read that order. I just got done reading that right before we went on, and because he had said that if it had been untimely just because you didn't know that it was that time was told or didn't have to be told, that you wouldn't have won, because that's not an excuse, which is the thing that really drives me crazy, because it should be an excuse. You have limited resources. But he said that because the law librarian, who was an agent of the state, gave you bad information, then it's excusable that why you didn't know the right date. That's what he said. I just read it.
But I don't recall him ruling that way though. I recall that in his argument, in his decision, that he believed me and they were wrong and all this. But I recall him saying something along the lines that even though he believed that, there wasn't actual physical evidence showing that I tried to go to the law library, that she lied to me, or any of those things. And therefore he couldn't rule in that way, but he found a different way to allow me to proceed.
Well, it was because he found or they gave him the paperwork showing how much you were on lockdown for that year.
Right.
And he agreed that.
I don't know. It's
that's fine.
At the end of the day, it's, you know, I remember it differently, but who the fuck cares? At the end of the day, that little detail.
I don't want to argue with you or anything. I just want to say I just read it, so that's why.
Well, no, I'm just saying. We can sit here and equivocate
you were there
and go back and forth about it, but regardless of how he ruled, we got to move forward. So that's all that matters. And so at the end of the day, we moved forward. Northwestern amended the petition. We launched our own investigations, getting all this information about what happened to the victim, who she was associated with, this mother-daughter team, all that stuff. And then we put everything on hold. We filed for a stay. The judge granted it, and we went back to the state courts because by law, if you have new evidence, you have to present it to the state court first before you can go to the federal. So we had to go through the whole thing all over again. Filing a second or a successive post-conviction petition, in which we got a hearing, which was very weird. I read the transcripts for it because I actually wasn't there for that hearing. But the judge, my trial court judge, was, he said the weirdest shit. He basically said, I remember your client. He's guilty. I remember him and his buddies picked this woman up and raped her and did all this stuff. And we're like, and Tom's like, Your Honor, this is not a rape case. This is a murder case. You're talking about a different case. He's like, nope. I remember your client. I remember exactly who he was and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what the fuck? And then he went on to say things like, I don't blame you, Mr. Garrity. I know you're just doing your job, blah, blah, blah. And Tom stood up and was like, no, Your Honor, I am doing what I'm doing because I believe in Mr. Strong. I believe that he's innocent, and that's why I'm fighting for him. And it was just the weirdest shit. I don't know if you've seen those transcripts, but it was the things that he was saying were unusual. And so anyway, long story short, we lost that. Went to the appellate court, lost that. Went to the PLA and the state Supreme Court. They sent it back, and then we lost again. And went back. So eventually, taking a long detour to get back to the federal court.
A long one, like
a very long one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we get back to the federal court, a lot of other things started to come together in this nice little package. We had been investigating a lot of things, and some of what we had been putting forward had caught the attention of the Attorney General's office, and of course, in a federal appeal or a federal habeas corpus petition, your prosecutor isn't a state prosecutor anymore. It's the Attorney General of that state. So anyway, she took interest in what was going on and wanted to have a meeting with us. Well, while that was happening, put a pin in that real quick. Mermel, who was the state prosecutor who convicted me, who prosecuted me, he was being pushed out of office because he'd had a lot of cases fall apart, and he was making these crazy statements as to why they should still be reliable cases. Juan Rivera, Jerry Hobbs, my case, just they were all falling to pieces, and he was giving these crazy explanations for him rather than just saying, yeah, I made a mistake. And there was a lot of cases like that. So they basically pushed him out of office, allowed him to retire. And Mike Nurheim ran for office during that. And he was running on this platform of change. He was looking at cases that were making innocence claims. And he said, I want to look at some of these cases. I want to find out how valid they are. I want to create a conviction integrity unit. And one of the cases he was looking at was mine. And so he gets elected. And not long after that, him and one of my attorneys, Judy Royal, created this rapport together, and they started talking more and more about my case. And so, pull out that pen, we're back in federal court, we got the Attorney General's office. At the same time, Mike Nurheim says, yeah, let's all get together. And all three parties got together and had this little powwow talking about my case. And they all came to the determination that it was in everybody's best interest to reinvestigate this case. And so they all determined to do that. And each party got their own independent forensic pathologist to reevaluate medical records, autopsy stuff, all that. We did DNA testing. We did everything we could think of to reinvestigate this case. And that is where the scientific evidence that proved me innocent came about, was those forensic pathologists, because they all came back with the same conclusions, all peer-reviewed, that I couldn't have committed this crime. And everything that was presented at trial was discarded because it didn't fit actual science. My confession was discarded because it didn't actually fit actual science. Because the state's whole theory, the confessions, everything was me and my buddies picked this woman up and tortured her and dumped her the next day. But what actually happened was the evidence proved that she had actually, when they found her, she had been dead for many days before they found her. And the injuries that led to her death were caused even further back than that. And the degrees of healing, the variance degrees in healing of a lot of similar injuries was evidence that she had actually been tortured for weeks, if not months, which makes sense because the last time her family ever heard from her was in like April or May of '99. And the last thing she said to them was, they don't want me to talk to you. And they never heard from her again. And then her body was found in December. So that's a long period of time. And that fits with the narrative of what the evidence proved. And so basically, all of that together, the Attorney General's office and the state's attorney signed off and said, yeah, we're fine with this. And the judge vacated my conviction.
That's great. I mean, so that was, I mean, as long as it took, at least at the end, thank God that there was the conviction integrity unit decided that it needed to be looked at too. Otherwise, you'd probably still be spinning your wheels in there.
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to add, if I can, real quick.
Yeah,
that's true on a whole other level. You go back to what we started this with about the TV shows and all that shit. People love DNA. Everybody, oh, DNA, man, it proves this, it disproves that, and blah, blah, blah. And it does. It's fucking awesome. I love it. It's a wonderful thing. But the reality is the large majority of cases do not have any DNA evidence to test. My case did not have any DNA evidence to test. So I was very lucky that the evidence we found was helpful for me. And, people always think, like I used to talk about when early on when I was still learning and didn't know all this stuff. I was like, well, how the fuck can they justify this? Like, they said that this woman was beaten in my residence and the body moved in my vehicle. Yet there's not a single drop of blood. There's not any of this, and everybody would tell me absence of evidence isn't proof of innocence. And it took me a while, but I finally grasped what that meant. And so, just because you don't have DNA to test or you don't have a pile of blood somewhere, a pool of blood somewhere, doesn't mean that makes you innocent. So it's a very weird thing, and a lot of people struggle to grasp that. But again, most cases don't have DNA. Right.
I know yours didn't, Ricky's didn't, Adam's didn't. There were so a lot of the people that we've talked to are people I've seen on my channel. They were non-DNA cases. Steve's case the first time was a DNA case, and that's how he was able to get his conviction turned over the first time. There is no DNA in this one that's gonna help him. So, so then you just try all these procedural things, constitutional issues, and it's just not as easy to win with those.
No, I got very, very lucky, and I had a fantastic legal team.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Northwestern by themselves are fucking awesome. Okay, but Tom Garrity is an amazing attorney. He's one of the most selfless fucking people I've ever met. He's awesome. I love him. I mean, he's one of those guys that when he went into the office in the morning, I was the only fucking thing he was thinking about. And when he went home at the end of the night, I was the only fucking thing he was thinking about. And he fought my case very passionately. And he had to lead numerous teams that changed all the time because Northwestern relies on students to help with a lot of stuff. And those students move on to other classes, or they graduate and move on to law firms and whatnot, and he'd have to train all new people. And so he was great at leading these people, the attorneys and the students to help fight my case. But it wasn't just Northwestern. Maria Huillo was an attorney with the Public Defender's Office in Washington, D.C., which is one of the best in the country. She joined our cause and joined the fight and moved to Chicago and helped with my case. And then 3 of the students who started on my case when Northwestern first took it graduated, went on to 2 huge law firms in Chicago, and brought my case with them to those law firms, so that I ended up getting both law firms involved in my case. And the interesting thing about that is I love those guys. They're awesome, but they don't even practice criminal law today. They're all patent and corporate attorneys. So I was like their only criminal case, you know. But thankfully they cared enough about my case and my story and about me to continue fighting even after they graduated. They could have moved on and never cared. So I had this very huge team of support at that time, and that helped a lot.
Yeah, because you went from having nobody, having nobody except for your grandma to type things for you, but you went from that to all of a sudden having this amazing legal team, and look what happened.
Yeah.
You know, what a difference.
Tom will tell you, I don't I don't like to take this credit. I mean, I do acknowledge I did a lot of hard work on my own, but Tom will always tell you that they would have never got involved if it wasn't for my hard work. You know, that I had filed some very good work and briefs on my own, and that paved a lot of what happened for me. I think he's a little bit more generous than I would be, but I do realize that, I mean, it was hard work, and I had to put that in. If I hadn't done any of the things I had done, if my grandmother wouldn't have helped me, if Jimmy hadn't helped me learn the law, all those things came into play, I would still be sitting in prison, you know, so.
And that's just, unfortunately, it's a trend you see in wrongful convictions. You know, people that have a private attorney are much less likely to be wrongfully convicted than somebody who has a public defender. And that's true of both trial lawyers and appellate attorneys. They're overworked, underpaid, and but what's really unheard of is the fact that, I mean, I just want to talk about again about how your judge is the one that contacted your lawyer and said, help this guy out. You know? Yeah,
that was impressive.
Yeah, I've never heard of such thing like that before.
Yeah. Am I echoing again?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that was impressive to me, because that made me feel like right from the get-go that he had already looked at my case. You know, that he actually read my brief. Because, like I said, if it would just been any procedural hearing, he could have said, just give him an appellate attorney, he'll be fine. Why would he call Tom Garrity at Northwestern personally and ask him to look at my case unless he had took the time to read what I wrote and saw something in it? Right. So that meant a lot to me. And you know, the interesting thing too is when I got that judge, I mentioned it to my buddy Jimmy. I also mentioned it to one of my other brothers, Joker, who got out a couple years ago. His real name's Robert. When in a previous case that Robert was on, Kennelly represented him. Kennelly used to be a defense attorney. And so when I got him as a judge, Robert and Jimmy were like, dude, you got a really great fucking judge. And I didn't realize just how lucky I was until it kept going on. And I was like, man, I got lucky.
Yeah, you did. No doubt about it. You did.
A funny story. I can't remember the details of it, but I'll try to make it interesting. I used to joke. I've done too many of these to remember how many now. But I used to joke early on that I had done 3 1/4 talks. And everybody's like, what the fuck does that mean? And so there was one time I was supposed to talk to a class at Northwestern, and I was sick. And so I could barely talk. I was coughing a lot. But I showed up because I was like, man, I'm going to honor my obligation. I just might not be very good. But lucky for me, Barry Scheck, I'm sure most of your viewers know who Barry Scheck is.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they do.
If not, he's from the New York Innocence Project. He's basically the founder of it. He's very well known in that world. He wrote the book Actual Innocence. He worked on the OJ case. He's a big guy. Wonderful person. He happened to be at Northwestern that day, and so he ended up doing the class with me, which is great because he's a great talker.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because he told this amazing story, and I know I won't get it 100% right. So Barry, if you do ever watch this, I apologize. But he told this story of when him and Kennelly were working on a case, and a lot of people were telling Matthew Kennelly, you need to abandon this case. If you want to be a judge, you better abandon this case. This is going to hurt you. And Kennelly was like, nope, I'm staying the course. This is what I believe in. I took this case because I believed in it, and I'm going to stand by it. And he did, and he won, and he still went on to become a judge. And because of that, he was able to free me, and I was able to sit next to Barry Scheck and tell this story to this class. And it was kind of like this great little circle of a story, and it was awesome. And hearing Barry tell it was just very comforting and interesting. So
I'm sure he has to be very good at that because he does a lot of talking, a lot of talks, a lot of teaching. So I assume he's probably pretty good at that, at the telling stories and keeping people invested in listening to what he's talking about.
He's a good dude. Listen, it got really dark. I'm gonna turn a light on real quick, all right?
I know, it's fine.
All right. Hold on a second.
It was too bright, and now it's too dark. Let's see. Are you guys can start with the questions probably soon because we pretty much have gone through everything. The thing that I just want to point out again.
For a long time, so
yeah, the thing I want to point out again is that that Jason filed his first petition in federal court in 2007. And he was released in 2015. So that was 8 years in federal court. But they obviously had a stint where they went back to federal court. Back to state court and everything. But yeah, it was a process, that's for sure. But obviously that in the end, one of the things that happened was that he was talking about how Mike Mermel, who was the AGA, it's an attorney general, right?
Yeah, no, he was a regular district attorney. He was a state's attorney.
Yeah. So here, Travis actually just put it in here because I remember I said this when I interviewed you, and then Richard put it up on the screen when he interviewed you, that Mermel had made the comment. So explain to me what difference it makes who she was. This was after the victim was ID'd. The taxpayers don't pay us for intellectual curiosity. They pay us to get convictions.
Yeah.
Which is just ridiculous. And that's not even the worst thing that he said.
No, that was for my case.
Yeah.
2 other cases that he was being criticized about. One was Juan Rivera, who's one of my brothers. I love Juan. He's awesome. Juan did, I want to say 22 years. It was 20 or 22, wrongfully convicted for the murder of 11-year-old girl. I believe her name was Holly Staker, if I'm not mistaken. And DNA came out that he was not the one that raped her because she was raped as well. And the prosecutor's explanation for that was, well, maybe the victim was out having sex with other people earlier that day before she ran into Juan and Juan killed her. And I'm like, so now you're blaming the victim who's an 11-year-old girl saying she's out just having sex randomly with people and then she got killed later? Like, come on. And then in the Hobbs case, Hobbs awaited trial for 5 fucking years in the county jail before he was proven that he didn't do anything wrong. But he was charged with the murder of his 9-year-old daughter, I believe 8 or 9, and her friend, who was also about 8 or 9 years old. And when they found the bodies, of course, he was the one that found them. And So they thought, oh, it had to be him. It was this guy. They put him in jail. This whole long story goes on. They find DNA evidence later that proved he didn't do it. And because the DNA was actually inside the little girls. Again, I'm trying not to get into details of those things, but
Yeah.
Basically, the prosecution's explanation for that was, well, maybe they were playing in a part of the park where people go to have sex sometimes, so maybe they got semen inside of them there. And it's like, now how the fuck can you justify that kind of thinking? Like, first of all, it's not like they were rolling around in a pool of fucking semen naked. I mean, like, what, why would you even think such a ridiculous thing? But he didn't want to admit he was wrong. So these are the explanations he would come up with. And so basically he was getting a lot of bad publicity about that shit. So bad that even the New York Times even wrote about it. I mean, it was bad. But he was allowed to retire and, save face and all that shit. So.
Yeah. That's just horrific to say things like that about little girls who were raped and murdered.
Yep.
That's just.
But it's that problem that you see a lot where you make a mistake, and rather than admit you made a mistake, it's shit. How can I justify this so that I don't look bad?
Right.
You know what? Suck it the fuck up and look bad. Just say, damn, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We're human. We fuck up.
Right.
I make mistakes all the fucking time. I'm not perfect. But there's this desire to constantly justify shit, and that's why I feel like we need to award prosecutors, cops, judges, lawyers that do the right thing, right? If you know that you've got a case where you were wrong and you prosecuted the wrong person, and you come out and say, hey, I made a mistake, I want to overturn this conviction, I'm sorry this happened, I would applaud that shit and say award that person for being honest, rather than have him say, oh, I'm gonna just ignore this and keep fighting it and say that I'm right and drag it on and keep a person suffering endlessly while the real perpetrator is free. And that's in the case of I believe it was Juan's case, for the little girl, Holly Staker, the real perpetrator went on to rape and murder other people. He was eventually caught, but it was like, you could have prevented that had you been willing to acknowledge mistakes were made, had you been willing to acknowledge that you didn't have it right, had you been willing to look at evidence rather than discard it because it didn't support your case. Mm-hmm. These are things that we need to make sure that our prosecutors do. And we need to award them when they do the right things, and hold them accountable when they don't. So, and that's the way you fix a lot of the system. It's not going to happen overnight. Right. And a lot of states will be harder than others. I mean, like Illinois, let's face it, they've got a long history of corruption. But it can happen, but you got to start by holding bad ones accountable and celebrating the good ones and awarding them where it's deserved. So yeah, that's just my thought on that.
Yeah, I think that's everyone's thought on that. I think that's, everybody that's here, at least, their thought is that I mean, it's a big problem with protecting the verdict. Protecting the verdict is the wrong attitude to have. Wanting to get convictions is the wrong attitude to have. I mean, it's supposed to be a pursuit of truth and justice, and
absolutely,
it doesn't mean convictions.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, a lot of people don't know this either, or even think about it really. But a prosecutor's duty is to represent all of the people of the state. All of the people of the state. That includes the defendant. So if they come across any information that says this isn't the right guy or something along those lines, it's their duty to do the right thing by that person, because he is a person of the state who they have a duty to represent and do right by. It's not their duty is not get vengeance for the victim. That is not what their job is. But they act like it is a lot.
But in your situation, like you said, there was already a missing persons report that had been made about the victim. If they had done if they had not had such tunnel vision, or not even tunnel vision, but if they didn't have it out to get you, If they would have done just a little bit, just try a little bit to do it to investigate, they would have found that out, and they would have known who she was, and you would never been sat in prison.
If my public defenders had done that,
yeah,
you know, they didn't investigate shit. They didn't bring forth any fucking evidence.
right.
They didn't do anything for me.
Right.
Had they even put forth an effort to investigate things. Now, I'm not going to excuse them, but I will say one thing about public defenders' offices, and that is that a lot of them are overburdened. They don't have the money to handle the caseloads, and a lot of attorneys get stacks of files all the time. So that does become a problem, and I feel like periodically we should have some kind of a class or a summit or something where they can be reminded of why they get into what they get into, because I think over time they get jaded a lot. And but I'm not excusing the attorneys that did me wrong. Marty Schaefer, I'll give him a pass because he actually tried to come back and do the right thing. The other one, whose name I'm not even going to mention because he doesn't deserve it, no, I don't have any sympathy or respect or anything for that man. He does not feel sorry that he did me wrong. In fact, he still lies to this day and says that I told him I did it. And I mean, it's like, what the fuck, guy, you know? And one of my dear friends, Lauren, who's a Chicago attorney, she even worked for him for a short time. And that's how we became friends. She was like, this guy's unfucking believable. I mean, he's just a terrible, terrible person. And she worked for him. But again, I don't want to talk too much about him.
But that's very much how we feel about Len Kaczynski. I mean, that guy could not have fed Brendan to the wolves more if he tried. I mean, before he even met Brendan, he went and told the press that he was looking at getting a plea deal for him. So basically insinuating that he's guilty, that we're going to look for a plea when he never even talked to Brendan yet. But he went in front of a camera and, in front of the media and basically just said like, oh yeah, we're going to try to plead him out. Whatever. It was like, wait to stand up your client there, dude. Your 16-year-old client, and then he did everything wrong. And then even afterward, he still refuses to believe that any of it was his fault. And now he's actually in trouble himself, which we've all enjoyed watching his hearings in court because he apparently has an issue with stalking, a woman who worked at the courthouse. So hopefully he's getting his comeuppance that way in some ways, but it's just disgusting that he defends what he did. He was actually on the side emailing the prosecutor and the investigators asking what he could do to help them. Like, what did they need from Brendan? And he would try to give it to them, and he would set him up. He set up searches and other things that, like, basically, what do you need me to do for you to convict my client? And all this kind of he wanted Brendan. He didn't believe Brendan was innocent. I don't think he really cared if Brendan was innocent. He didn't want to deal with it, and he wanted to plead it out. And so it's like, basically, if I can convince them like that he's guilty and I can get like more evidence, that's more likely, Brendan's more likely to plead out, and then I'll be done with this case. And
it just makes it easier for them.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in my cell in county jail, and I would look down on the street because we had windows, and I would look down on the street. And I remember one day seeing my public defender and the state's attorney walking together, going to lunch. And I'm like, wow, I get they have to work together and they're colleagues, but it's like when you're chumming with the person, it's kind of like, what's really going on there? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
Right.
But who is this? Sean? I can't remember. Maroney?
Yeah, Maroney. Yeah. Wizard.
No, I agree. That's the cops and prosecutors lie a lot. They get away with it. We don't hold them accountable the way we should. What's sad is that I want to go back to interrogations, and I want to say cops are allowed to lie to people in interrogations legally. They are allowed to do it by law, and I think that is terrible. People justify it because they see shit on TV like Law and Order and think, oh, it's a bad guy. Who cares if they're lying to him? Well, look at it through this lens. If you have a career criminal who's being interrogated and you lie to him, he ain't gonna give a fuck. He's a career criminal. He knows the fucking ropes. He's not gonna give you shit. But if you have an innocent person there and he's already scared, he's confused, he's just wanting to figure out what the fuck is going on, and you start lying to him that you got all this other shit and all this evidence, that's just going to confuse him and scare him even more and make him more vulnerable. So being able to lie to a person, whether it's legal or not, I don't think they should be allowed to do that. I think that's wrong.
Right, I agree.
And it sets the stage for false confessions. And you want to talk about, I'll tell you what, Illinois, there was once a person that made a statement about Cook County. Mine was Lake County, but they made a statement about Cook County and confessions. And they said that Cook County was to false confessions what Cooperstown is to baseball. Basically the Hall of Fame for those that don't know what Cooperstown is. But anyway, but it's true. It's like that's their thing. They're so fucking good at it. When we were filing my civil suit, there was actually a case that we mentioned of a false confession in Lake County that had the same officers involved, where they convinced a woman. So they found a dead newborn baby in a trash can, and they arrested this woman. And she eventually confessed and said, "Yep, that was my baby. I dumped it in the trash can and I walked away and listened to it cry and blah, blah, blah." Turns out that woman never even had a fucking baby. They had the wrong person, but they kept at her and kept at her and kept at her until she finally said, okay, and gave them what they wanted. And they broke her. And she never even had a baby. And it's like, you see stuff like that, and it's like, wow, how the fuck can we allow that to keep going on? The problem is most people don't see that shit on a daily basis. And they're fed the crap that we see on these TV shows. So they think that's real justice, and it's not.
They take advantage of the fact that people who are innocent want to be helpful. And they take advantage of the fact that people like, well, I'm not guilty or anything. And so of course I want to help out, I want to help find what happened, or whatever. So you want to do your duty as a citizen, as a good citizen, to actually try to be helpful to law enforcement. And they use that against you. Because then they make you promises, they act like it's like you're not in trouble, and then they sit there and question you about things, and they try to twist your words, and then they get to the point where they just start lying to you, and they get you all twisted up. And obviously this. I'm just saying, to everybody else, it was like that is the biggest thing they use against people is people wanting to be helpful and caring about what happened to somebody. If somebody died, they care that somebody was killed, and if I can help you in any way, I'm going to help you. That got Stephen in trouble, even though Stephen should have known better because Steve had already been wrongfully convicted once, and he still talked to them without an attorney.
Oh, I'll never know. My only thing I ever say to a fucking cop in an interrogation room ever again is, "Where's my attorney?" That's it. Only words you need to know. Where's my attorney?
Right. And
what's
don't
your
let
name? I don't have a name. Where's my fucking attorney? That's my name.
Right. And even if they try to get you to talk, they try to get you to just say, "I want my attorney." Don't even answer like, "How is the weather?" Don't answer any questions of any kind, because some of them will try to say that it's implied consent, that you waived your rights then, because you said you weren't going to say anything and then you do. And they've seen that happen before. So yeah, just always say, "I want a lawyer." And I always tell people too that people don't understand is that unless you're under arrest, they can't keep you there unless you're under subpoena or under arrest. And if you get up to leave, because they tell you that, you don't have to answer their questions. And if you get up to leave and they try to stop you, say, "Am I under arrest?" Because if I'm not under arrest,
so that's the thing. People need to learn their rights because most people don't know what their rights are.
No.
And generally, I'm gonna say generally they won't let you leave. They weren't gonna let me leave. I guarantee you that.
Right.
But that's that's the way it is sometimes. Look, I mean, we're at an hour and a half. Do people have any more questions? Because I'd like to answer any questions people have rather than just keep rambling.
Well, while we're waiting for people to ask questions, I want everyone to remember next Saturday at the same time, 6. Hopefully, we'll be on time. That was totally on me. Jason was here on time. I wasn't. But Jason had the idea that he'd really like to talk to everyone, more of a casual chat. That we'll just chat about whatever, and it's basically so that people can get to know who he is as a person and not just as that guy that was in prison once. I can imagine that as being an exoneree, it's like you want to talk about your experiences because you want to help change things, but you also don't want that to be the only way people see you.
Right.
So we thought,
it becomes a very big part of your life where it's almost the only thing you ever fucking talk about. And it's not that I don't mind if it helps people learn if it's raising awareness. But I'm more than just a guy that was wrongfully convicted. So.
Right. So I hope that people are interested in that. Maybe you can get a little encouragement in the chat and let us know if that's something you're interested in, that if you're okay with coming back to just have a chat that's not about prison, about being an exoneree, about anything, just get to know Jason as a person.
And if you don't, if you're like, hey, fuck that guy, we don't give a shit what he's about, then hey, that's okay too.
He can't see the chat, so I just won't tell him. That's fine. I won't tell him what you said. So Linda wants to know if you're helping any other exonerees, or other wrongfully convicted people right now. Sorry.
I do, but I don't. So I'm not an attorney, so I don't have like full-on involvement in cases. But what I do is, well, I'm on the advisory council for the Tennessee Innocence Project. So I help where they need help. But I also, I get a lot of people that reach out to me on Instagram, and I help people that way, like by trying to guide them towards people that can help them in whatever state they're in. Or I'll do something like, for example, my buddy Jimmy Soto, he's been locked up over 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. He recently, my friend Lauren, who is a lawyer, combining words now, she's helping on his case now. And so recently I drafted up a letter for her to apply to her briefs trying to seek clemency for him. So I'll do things like that as well. Yeah, I'm always trying to help where I can, but or I'll be on a committee for like the wrongful conviction day planning to try to raise awareness, things like that. But I don't actively get involved with, huh?
Should we mention that of what we're trying to do for wrongful conviction day?
Oh yeah, we can say, yeah, we're gonna try to have a live stream from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I believe. I'm still pushing for 24 hours. I wanted to, but it's a lot for them to take on right now, and they've never done it before, so they're but we're trying to do that since COVID. We can't do a lot of the things we usually do, so we're trying to find ways to raise awareness and still honor wrongful conviction day, which is October 2nd, by the way, without causing a problem for people. And one of the things that we decided to do was a live stream, which I got the idea from Tracy and others because of the 48-hour thing they did. And I'm like, well, this is an awesome idea. Why don't we do this for wrongful conviction day? And then another one, I'll try to see if I can post it for people to go. I don't know how this will work yet, but October 22nd, Tennessee Innocence Project is having their event. And we could always use the support there. We're still a young Innocence Project. So, we're still getting off the ground, and it costs a lot of money to fight these cases. We don't have a big staff. So, any support that you want to give to them, that would help a lot too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are just a few of the things I'm involved with. And then the conferences. So yeah, anything that's coming up that you want to share, just let us know. And there's a bunch of people here that'll help with advertising, promoting, whatever, just sharing it on their social media. Like, I don't have a lot of followers on Twitter because I hate it, but there's a lot of people that actually have pretty big followings in some areas. So, so now you're okay. Maria, I think next time though, I am going to add this. Next time, I'm going to make sure I have better lighting. Yeah, I'm like, why are you so dark? Didn't you turn on a light? I did, but my living room is like naturally dark. Well, I'm gonna go turn on some of these behind me lights and see if that helps. I don't know. You're fine. You can be in the dark. It's okay. Well, hold on. Let me try it. Just see if it works. I'll scroll down for the questions again. Don't worry. Just don't throw any more at me right this second, so I can catch up. Oh hell no, that don't help at all, does it? No, that just blinds me out. Now it's really bright behind you. Yeah, and so now I can barely see your face at all. How about this one? Some people say people. How about that one? That's better. Yes, we have a winner. That's better. Okay, so Marie says, thank God for a lot of lights, huh? All right, go ahead. Yeah. Question from your friend Paul M. He wants to know if you'd advocated for sausage diversity in prison. Do you know what that's about? No, all right, so they use the same sausage under different dishes names as if they are fed something different. All right, I can't read that. Hold on. Sorry, I know it's a little small for you. Okay, I know what he said. All right, so just to give you some history. Hi, Maria, by the way. Thanks for watching. Maria is a wonderful person from Spain, and she is relaying a message from my buddy Paul. Paul is my brother, one of my best friends, who unfortunately is still in prison and might not ever get out, unfortunately. And he has a great sense of humor, and he likes to joke about a lot of things. And I think what he's referencing there is that in prison, they like to they have, all right, so we get crappy food in prison, all right? Most people, I'm sure, can assume that. But they would have this, what you could call it, a lot of things. They call it brats, Polish sausages, Italian sausages. They call it all different kinds of things every single time. But it was always the same thing. It was this horrible, horrible, nasty-ass sausage and a loose-ass freaking skin that we would call, honestly, we would call them cocks and socks. It was like a fucking sausage with a loose baggy condom on it. They were horrid. And they would call it something different all the time. It was the same fucking thing. So I'm guessing that's probably what he's joking about.
Well, he then said, LOL, well, he just wants to say hi and he sends you his best. He wishes he could see these interviews. Greetings from Spain.
Absolutely. If you talk to him,
you're all weird again. You have to go out and come back in again. This happened when he was on with Jane and Di, and this happened when he was on with Richard. That he gets this tinny like quality to his voice, and yeah, he just has to leave and come back. So sorry about that.
All right, no worries. But did she hear what? Hey, Maria, just to reiterate, just tell him I said hi and I love him and miss him. I emailed him recently, so hopefully he got that,
Okay.
or he'll get it soon. So
Monty just says talk music. Gee, that won't be hard for you.
Yeah, well, that's going to be more next time, I think, though, right?
No, that's what he means. He's talking about for next time. Talk music.
Yeah.
Jason
No,
is a
absolutely.
big music guy, and he's trying to like help me be less hopeless with music, but I can't help it. He's always saying music, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
I don't think Monty would like what I've been listening to today, though. I've been listening to a lot of Soylent Green, which is like really dark sludge death metal type shit from Louisiana.
Gee, I wonder why you haven't sent that to me.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. But
you learned your lesson on that one.
But no, I do. I love music. I always joke. I like everything from Beethoven to Slipknot. I like country, jazz, blues, rock, metal, rap. I like all kinds of music. If I can feel it, if I can get into it, then I like it. I'm just an artist at heart, I think. So.
Linda's saying that she wants to be a part of the wrongful conviction day thing if we can help. She said she can do 24 hours. I've already talked to Kate from the Innocence Network, and I've offered up my mods to help out if she wants to for any time really, but also for the if they want to extend to 24 hours. I've offered to produce behind the scenes because she thinks that she's going to probably be behind the scenes and try to keep everything on the main channel so they don't have to jump back and forth too much, but she doesn't know how to do that. So I said that I would go on with her behind the scenes and try to produce from back there with her. But
yeah, I think part of the problem is because it's a new thing for us. One, she's worried about handling it all by herself, but two, I think she's worried we're not going to have enough content. And I'm like, I think we're going to have an overflowing abundance of content. You know, like
hours.
But it's because it's a new thing, so that's all it is.
We still did 48 hours when it was new too. It's the same thing. So I'm just saying, I can help fill the. I can help get people to help fill the time if she needs that. But she wasn't even aware that moderators were important. And I'm like, oh, I said the most successful thing to having a successful stream is moderators, is because they will keep everything under control. You don't have to worry about having people popping up in your chat and causing problems. Plus, they will always post like the links if anybody wants to advertise their group, their business, their whatever. You can always put all the links in there, their social media. This is why you need moderators. Yeah. So, and I know that Linda didn't even have to say anything. I knew that Linda and Rhonda and Julie Fenn, they would all be pitching. They would all, and Jane too. So I offered you all up to her, just so you know.
Nah, she did tell me she was happy that she talked to you and you were very helpful and all that. So and I'm sure she's gonna appreciate any support we can get. So
Yeah, I get how it's intimidating. I mean, because when it's something new, why we were crazy enough to try 48 hours. That was Richard. We're putting that on Richard because I had actually suggested 24 hours and I had thought about 48 hours, but I'm like, okay, let's just gauge how people feel about 24 hours. But then Richard jumped in. We should just do 48 hours. I didn't even say anything to anybody. He just announced it on his channel. I think we'll do 48 hours. Okay.
I honestly feel like we could do that at the Innocence Network because wrongful conviction day is an international thing. So you can easily fit a multitude of time slots all around the world.
Right. And, and I've got Jane.
But maybe we'll do that in the future.
So she can moderate.
I think this is a trial thing for them. And if they like it, if it turns out well, I wouldn't be surprised if we revisit it next year for a longer duration of time.
Yeah.
So.
It's the timing is perfect because of COVID and that they're not able to do the types of panels that they would normally want to do. So, so it's kind of good if they can do both, if they can still do some stuff in person, if they can, but also, it's just a nice thing to have because you can reach a lot more people. That's why I told her, I said, reach a lot of people. And we had 18 countries, I think, tune into Mammothon. So 8 people from 18 different countries tune into Mammothon. So it's definitely, just because it's our justice system in the United States, people are still very interested in it and want to try to understand because they watch these things and they're like, they don't
absolutely. But the other thing that people need to realize too is, we have a big problem here with wrongful convictions, but wrongful convictions is not a uniquely American thing. It happens everywhere. People are wrongfully convicted in a lot of countries. Some dear friends of mine, Peter and Sonny Pringle, over in Ireland, they're wonderful people. Peter was originally from Ireland. He still is. He lives there. But he was wrongfully convicted in Ireland and sentenced to death. So, I mean, wrongful convictions happen everywhere. But, Sonny was wrongfully convicted in Florida. Her husband was executed wrongfully in Florida. Wow. She got out. Her and Peter met because they were doing the circuit, going around touring, talking about the death penalty. And they met, fell in love, moved to Ireland, and opened their home to exonerees, which is how I got to go to Ireland. And they're just wonderful, wonderful people, and they got giant hearts. And but yeah, wrongful convictions is not just an American problem.
No, definitely. People are very
interested. It's probably worse here because we monetize the prison industry. We have way more people per capita in prison than any other country. But there's other countries too, though, that deliberately go out of their way to like lock up masses of amounts of people just because they don't like them. So I mean, this shit happens everywhere. It's not just a unique thing here. Right.
Now, right now, Shaz is just saying hi from Australia. And so whoever else, Sean is here from Sean, where are you from? I can't remember. It's the UK somewhere, I think. Now Shree's saying, if we're talking about favorite music, I am a huge Mamas and Papas fan, also the Beatles, Eagles, and more. Nice. So you'll definitely have people that want to chat about music. I'm the only weird.
I like the Eagles. Unless you want to talk about some old stuff. Next week, when we do this, if you come on the show, I'll tell you a very cool story about Graham Parsons. Most people probably know the story about Graham Parsons. They made a movie about it called Grand Theft Parsons. But I heard the story from Phil Kaufman himself, who was there and was best friends with Graham Parsons. So I'll tell you that story next time.
Okay. Sean also said Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, and some stuff by 1 or 2 white people.
Well, all of those that she mentioned, though, are great. So I was fortunate. My mom, my dad listened to great music. My mom she liked rock and roll. She liked disco. She liked Motown. My dad liked a lot of rock and roll. My grandparents listened to Elvis. My uncle was a big Doors fan. So I got a wide introduction to music. And then we moved around so much when I was growing up that I would be introduced to different music from different areas a lot. So I've always had just a great fascination with it, and it's always been very important to me. Music and film, ever since I was a little kid. has always been very, very important to me. I related to so much of it,
Yeah, now let's see. So Sean said he's in London, Alice is in Scotland, and she's here. Now they're all talking about music. Next week, people, next week, we're going to talk about all that you want to talk. Yeah, Travis loves the birds. So, yeah.
Well, he knows who Graham Parsons is.
Yeah,
so,
anyway, I'm sure he does. Travis knows a lot. He's always talking about concerts and stuff like that in our chat, and I'm just always like, whatever. David's from Australia. So yeah, so we have actually quite a few people, but that is really it's really late for you, Sean, and for Alice. It's really late for you guys. So anyway, are there any more questions? Oh, question. Travis actually put it in big capital letters, question, and I'm still missing it. What's the story with Hips? What was she about when she was interrogated? How did they get her to recant? You got that pro se.
Yeah. The hell's that? All right. Anyway, I heard some weird background noise. All right. Anyway, yeah. So Peggy Hips, or Margaret, whatever way you want to pronounce her or say her name. She was a girl that so my ex-girlfriend, there was a time period where her and I kind of split off for a second, and that's when I met Peggy, and we had a short thing, and then my ex and I got back together. And if you want to call it that, she was not very monogamous, if you will. But anyway, so when I got locked up, she was one of the people that they brought in to try to make statements against me. And she lied and said that the shirt that the victim was found in was mine, because they were trying to find evidence to link me to this crime. And so they were trying to say that the clothes the victim was found in were my clothes, which was insane to even think about, right? I mean, you're gonna say that we picked this woman up off the street, killed her, and then I put my clothes on her. Why wouldn't I put her clothes on her? That doesn't make any fucking sense. But nothing they ever argued in the case made sense. So I mean, I could give you numerous examples of that. But she recanted later on. We reached out to her. I forgot who actually went and talked to her. But I started communicating with her, and I was like, look, I understand you're scared. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I just want you to do what you know is the right thing to do. And she did. And she told the truth, that she lied because they were intimidating her, and they threatened to, paint her as a certain kind of a woman and do all these things that, scared her. So she was like, well, I don't want nothing to do with this. So she told them what they wanted to hear. But she later recanted, thankfully.
Okay, yeah, I kind of know what. I think I'll show him what you showed me the other day, Travis, and what you pointed out. I'll just show him that later, separately.
First thing I did when I walked out of prison,
yeah,
I cried. No, the day I left prison, when I was walking down the hall towards the door, I saw my mom and those three attorneys, the students that went on to the firms, they were there. And I just broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a little baby. It was just all those years of holding in all the emotion, because you can't, you don't want to show your, emotions in prison. You don't cry in front of people in prison. So it was like all that weight just fucking broke, and I fucking bawled. And then I tried to compose myself, and we went outside, and there was a few reporters there, and we spoke to them. And then I went, and the three of my attorneys and my mom and I, we went and got a bite to eat. And I ate my first meal as a free man in 15 and a half years. And I got a bacon mushroom cheeseburger at this little diner. And it was fucking awesome. And there's an orange story in here too, I'll tell you if you want, but hold on. But an interesting little thing about that is that David Lugar, who's one of the three attorneys that was there that day, still has the receipt from that day hanging on his wall in his office, along with a picture of all of us and a thank you card that I sent him.
What kind of cheese?
I don't remember.
I know, like mushroom. I don't like them, but mushroom Swiss are really popular.
Those are usually the best. That's probably what it was. Yeah. I don't recall.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because my family makes fun of me. I don't like Swiss cheese. Yeah.
And it was funny because I was so out of breath and like overwhelmed with everything. Like the waitress was like, "Are you okay? You like, yeah, it looked like you just ran a marathon." And so I told her what had happened. And so a little bit later, I was telling my lawyers about this orange story. And so a lot of people don't know the orange story, and it's an ever evolving story. So I'll tell it now. But the orange story is when I was in Menard, which was the main prison I was in for a long time. They didn't have oranges. They didn't give us oranges because they didn't want us to make hooch or anything like that out of it. Prison wine. So when I went to Stateville on my writ for the procedural issue for the federal Hague, they had oranges, and I was just like, "Holy fuck!" I had not seen an orange in 7 years, 8 years. So I was like, and I used to love oranges as a kid, and so I was so amazed. I just held that orange and smelled it, and like rolled it around in my hands and savored the fact that I had an orange. Right. And then I ate it, and it was the best orange ever. And, a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, he must really love oranges." It's not about how much I liked oranges. It's about the littlest fucking things in life that we take for granted on a daily basis can mean the world for you when you're deprived of those things. And so it was it was a big deal. And so I was telling them this when we were at this diner. And the waitress overheard me, and she brought me an orange. And so the story grew. And then a couple of years later, I was at an innocence conference, and I was talking to the Moth group because the year previous I'd done a Moth story, which I don't know if people know that the Moth group is a storytellers group, and they go to the conferences every year to help people tell their stories, and how to do it very well. And so I did one the year before, and the next year I was working with them on some stuff, and I was telling somebody about the orange story. And after it was over, one of the women that was in the group came up and gave me an orange, and it just keeps kind of growing like that. And people always want to hear the story, so I keep telling it, and it keeps growing. The day Adam Brazil got out of prison, somebody gave me a freaking orange, and I'm just like, "Holy shit!" The story just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that's the orange story. And
you're lucky your address is not available, because a bunch of people would be sending you oranges if they knew where you lived.
I know, right? When I did the wrongful conviction podcast, that was one of the things. Like, this woman that worked there with Jason was like, "You got to tell the orange story. You got to tell the orange story." I'm like, "All right." So yeah, that's a story that a lot of people like to hear. So
that's cool though.
Yeah,
it's a cute story. Linda put a bunch of oranges.
And somebody's sending me virtual oranges, it looks like. So.
Yes. Linda put some oranges up there for you. Okay, so do we have any more questions? Oh.
No? We're good?
Yeah, I think we're all right now. I think so.
All right.
I think so.
Well, we've been on for almost 2 hours. Why don't we say we give it another 7 minutes, and we'll wrap it up.
That's nothing.
I still got to make dinner, so.
Okay, like don't even. Yeah, this is what happens every time. Jason will call me, and then he will say that I only got a few minutes because I gotta make dinner, and then we end up talking for like an hour and a half, and then he's like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna put the pizza in. I'm gonna put a pizza in while we're talking." And then his pizza will get done, and he's like, "I gotta go, my pizza's done." And then we keep talking for longer, and then he eats cold pizza all the time. That's why I laugh, because you always say that.
But I do. I am a good cook, though. In fact, tonight I'm having.
I know, we talked about
this may sound weird to people, but I'm having bunless cheeseburgers with carrots, green beans, and yellow squash. So
are you just trying to be careful with the carbs, or what?
Yeah.
Or no, you just want it bunless because you don't want buns.
I do try to watch my carb intake.
When I am done, my husband grilled out and made brats and Italians again, because I just talked to you about that the other day. And
I love brats.
Yeah, so he made. I'm gonna have some Italians, but I can just heat them up when I'm done. I'll throw them in the microwave for a little bit. But yeah, that's what they did while I was talking. They were eating. So rude. Yeah, I know you love brats. We just talked about that. That's because he bought a big package, so we got to use all of them now. So
That's pretty much that's usually my summers. Every summer I usually go up to Illinois and Wisconsin, and my uncle will stock his freezer full of brats, and we'll basically cook out brats all the fucking time because he knows how much I enjoy them. And most people in other states, like down here, you don't see very many people that eat brats unless they're from Chicago. When I went to Arizona to visit my grandparents right after I got out, and they wanted to have a little celebration, I was like, well, I want some brats. They had to like shop all around to find them. And even when they found them, they're like, how do you cook them? So I had to teach them how to cook them because, you know, most people in other states, they're just in the South, they don't know about brats, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm sure some people do, but it's not common, I should say.
In Wisconsin, we do. And usually there's beer involved, beer brats.
Yeah.
And in Wisconsin, it's the home of the tailgating. So, yeah, so that's what we do, brats and beer. And I don't like beer though, so there's that. So everyone's saying thank you. A lot of people have said they'll definitely tune in next week. So next week, as I said, you know, Jason will be back, and we're just going to have more of a fun talk and not so depressing stuff and everything. And then the week after that, for everyone, remember that is Richard's celebration of life, and there is a Facebook page that is an event page for the event, and they are streaming it on YouTube because of COVID. They're limiting how many people can be there in person, so they are going to stream it on YouTube. That's at 1:00 my time, I believe. Julie will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1:00 my time. So I'm keeping you busy for 3 Saturdays in a row. So today, next Saturday, and then the Saturday after that. So I hope everybody can for all of them. And yeah, so people are just saying thank you. You're welcome to everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope that I did it justice. I know I'm not Richard, and we're very different. We have very different styles, but I hope that everybody still got something out of it and can understand that, you know, hopefully that we did our best to honor what he wanted. So,
well, I'm glad we did this, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm glad we did this. I look forward to next week. For those that don't know, you can find me on Instagram at JasonStrong1, at Twitter and JasonStrong01. So you know, if you're interested in that, but otherwise we'll see you next week, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. Yeah, and if you're a coffee drinker, go try Catfight Coffee.
Was that the coffee we were talking about before?
I gotta promote my buddy. Come on.
I'll say, was that the one we were talking about before?
Huh? Catfight? Yeah. That's AC Slade's coffee company. Him and his wife started it. And they got great coffee. So if you like good quality coffee, catfight.com.
All right. I wish
you can find them on
Instagram, I would put it down.
So. Huh?
If you had told me ahead of time, I would have put it down so I could show it for everybody.
Oh, that's fine. But yeah, you can find them on Instagram too if you want. Catfight Coffee is their page. So.
Okay.
But yeah. I'm actually committing a bit of blasphemy. I've been drinking Catfight coffee out of a Dead Sled coffee cup. How fucked up is that? But anyway.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say again. I was going to say if I really wanted to channel Richard, I would say if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe. And that's what Richard did. And it's like, yeah, but I don't really care. I don't want to be asking for subscribers or anything, but that was just like, that's what he always did. All right. Thanks. Okay. Oh, Travis just put the Catfight Coffee link in the chat. So there you go.
All right.
Jason, there goes your sponsorship deal.
Yeah. No, AC's just a really cool guy, man. I'm very honored and thankful I got to know who he is and meet him. Honestly, that's one of the coolest things. It sucks everything I had to go through, but I get to meet a lot of really cool people. I get to meet, celebrities and, actors, musicians. I get to meet just some really cool people. And so that's kind of cool. I like that, And AC is one of those people, man. He's just an awesome guy. And and I admire what he's done, so.
So next time, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you're also interested in doing, since that's more on a personal side that's not involved with the wrongful convictions? Do you want to cover that next time then? All right, sounds good.
Absolutely.
All right, so if nobody has anything else, then we're gonna wrap it up. I'll let Jason go eat for once. Well, actually, I'll probably go eat too. So, but thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to Julie. Didn't get to say hi to you because I knew that Jason was talking, but to Julie, and then to I'm gonna go up the list. Travis, Sean, Linda, Shree. I know you're in there. Alice is there. Sean, Victor, Monty, whoever was all here. I'm sorry, I might not remember everyone right off the top of my head, but thanks to everyone for being here and being here the entire time, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, so then we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.